making sense of the madness. We got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking to Zach Payne about everything in the mix, from Nazi rallies in MSG to rulings that might surprise you. We also got Danny Rosenberg on the financials. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. We are now joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the guy behind RedPillNews.com. Well, it is Red Pill News 78.
78.
Yes, Red Pill. Damn it. See, I've already screwed up the show. Everybody should just stop watching. It is RedPill78News.com. And obviously the 78 is not spelled out. We kept it simple for you. Let's talk Nazi rallies. Now,
I love Nazi rallies.
Why not? Mm-hmm. So it's almost unbelievable to me that you would have the mainstream trying to put a modern day political rally in the middle of New York City, where we all know the Nazis have a stronghold. In that whole East Coast region of Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, forget about it, folks. The Nazis are aplenty. I looked at this, and there's a multitude of things that came to mind even before the Nazi thing. We've had these discussions. I've talked about the last couple months that obviously the podcast circuit he was on was going to have its crescendo in Joe Rogan. We'll talk about that. Obviously happened. I knew that also Joe would offer to Kamala Harris, but I doubted very much that would happen. But I also put out a caveat where I said immediately after the first debate, when they said there weren't going to be any more, I said if Trump was smart, he would challenge her to a debate in Madison Square Garden, and he would pick a moderator. His would be Joe Rogan, in my opinion, and she would come in, and she would pick her moderator. And we'll really see how blue and red New York is, especially New York City. First come, first serve, audience reactions, fair game. Obviously, that didn't happen, but surreally, we do get this mega Trump rally. And, I remember going there at 10 years old for the first time for some WWF wrestling, folks. The Garden is iconic. It is something I will never forget. It's 35 years later, and I still revel in that memory. Packs it out. Got Hinchcliffe on the mic doing his thing, to the point where even Jon Stewart, when he heard the criticisms, was like, come on. He's a comedian, and a comedian I rather enjoy, and showed some of his other work. And if you're familiar with Kill Tony, it's knives out, and they're not stabbing you in the back. It's full frontal.
Right here in the face.
Exactly. I mean, they're doing the man dance on that show. And then you had all these other people, Tucker Carlson, you have Tulsi Gabbard, and so many more. What was your take on this whole shebang, goes start to finish, and then, of course, Nazis?
Okay. Well, I'd actually like to begin with the Nazis, because I have a very specific comment about that. Some people would say that the mainstream media have gone too far this time by comparing Trump's rally to a Nazi rally simply because it was held there in 1939. I say the mainstream media didn't go far enough. I say that Madison Square Garden has a long and illustrious history of holding events that we could also compare to that Nazi rally. Why not Taylor Swift? Why not Elton John? Why not Bruce Springsteen? We can go back through the entire thing. It's freaking ridiculous. And if you watch the Madison Square Garden rally, then I think that anybody would come away from that objectively understanding that we have reached a certain cultural zeitgeist in America. It was such an incredible cross-section, not only of who's who in modern-day conservative thought and ideology, but also just a wonderful cross-section of America. I thought it was very brave of them to have Tony Hinchcliffe come out first and be the
I
first
like
thing.
that. I'm so
loved it.
sick of, listen, I'm so sick of, oh, Trump says dumb things. And listen, we'll get into the entire Joe Rogan interview as well. I get it that people say that, but at the same time, look at the policy, look at the common sense message when the chips are down. And again, Rogan gets it right. One of the reasons people like him is he's sharp when he has to be, off script and off the cuff, and basically a comedian. You know, you have to have that witty boom, boom, boom. So again, I'm glad. Like, listen, one of the best things about that Rogan interview is Joe, I know you're not a Kamala guy. Just come out, Joe. Just you know what team you're on. The whole, like, even in the mix with the comedian and the host, while he's rallying for these votes, he comes out and says that. And then, you know, look, there's a lot of meandering in the interview, but like at that moment where he realizes he's done about 3 hours, he goes, wait a minute, how long have we gone? Oh, okay, we done. We got wrapping it the whole nine. But I'm sorry I interrupted. You're right. Hinchcliffe to me, brav mother truckin'. Oh, continue.
100%. You know, I mean, this faux outrage that the left tried to incite over a joke regarding Puerto Rico. I mean, just take a look at Puerto Rico's history. It's unfortunate, but the same people who are upset about the garbage patch in the middle of the ocean that unfortunately is Puerto Rico are the same people who are telling us that we can't eat meat because cows are farting too much, or we can't breathe or drive cars because of carbon dioxide. If these people truly cared about the environment, they would care about environmental catastrophes like Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, the infrastructure is just not very good in Puerto Rico. People are using riverbeds as trash dumps. They've got trash strewn all over the place. It is a legitimate problem, and the mainstream media, the left, has reported on it on a number of occasions over the last couple of years. So it's disingenuous. And Tony Hinchcliffe is a brilliant comedian because there is something special to the roast. It's a lot like Donald Trump, okay, because there is honesty in that comedy. And as far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump has been one of the greatest comedians of the last decade because so many comedians have not been able to really get up there on stage and become honest because of cancel culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you make fun of somebody that you're not supposed to make fun of, all bets are off. Forget about it. But the thing is, they want to make it out to be that Hispanics and Puerto Ricans are going to abandon Donald Trump because of Tony Hinchcliffe's joke. It's not happening. It's made absolutely no movement. He just did a rally in Allentown, Pennsylvania, one of the largest concentrations of Puerto Rican immigrants in the United States. It was a lot of Puerto Ricans. It was a lot of Americans that were born here, a cross-section of the American cultural fabric, and there were two counter-protesters that were walking around upset that Donald Trump was going to be coming there. A senator from Puerto Rico also endorsed Donald Trump at this rally. So the outrage that they are trying to foment throughout this country is simply not working anymore. People see it for exactly what it is, and people are ready for honesty because without honesty, we cannot fix the problems that plague our country and plague our proxies throughout the world.
So let's talk about the Rogan interview. I caught this on my ride home on Friday evening into Saturday morning. I saw that it was posted on the YouTubans. I have myself a little Android head unit that lets you do what you want. Imagine that with your own stuff, not being locked out of anything. And so I threw it on. And I, unlike most, because I've talked to people, oh, I saw this and that. I watched the full 3 hours. You know,
Me too.
I often, even in the political arena, watch all 26 minutes start to finish of Joe Biden stuff, even though there's a 7-minute buffer before he comes out and a 3-minute aftermath of him strolling. So you only got to get, I like to see what's going on with everything. Now, Joe also talked about this the next day on his Fight Companion. There was a day card in the UFC. He was talking about it with Brian Callen, with Eddie Bravo in particular. Brendan Schaub's there. Talks about the weave, and he actually talked about this with Trump. And he goes, he'll go off on stories, he's a good orator. And a lot of people say, like I was talking to my buddy, he's like, when I'm talking to RFK Jr., I know I'm having an intellectual conversation. And I go, yeah, but Trump's doing what Trump wants to do. It's not like he didn't get the question. Like, let me give you an example. His big complaint was the first day in the White House, which Joe tried to wrangle him back into. But quite frankly, what I read there is Trump didn't want to talk about his first day politically in the White House and what decisions he had to make. And maybe that a lot of vipers warmed up to him and he might have made mistakes there, right? So instead, there's this little thing, Lincoln, his wife. They had a son, Joe. They had a son who got very sick, didn't make it. And he just rattles on for about 3 minutes on this little memoriam. So surreal. And Joe's like, but no, I want to talk about like your first day in the mix, White House. He just didn't want to answer the question. Now, later on, when he does want to make a point, let me use RFK Jr. as an example. And he talks about the Maha and how he likes Bobby. He goes, but I have to be really careful about him because he's anti-gas and oil. So thought that was a revealing moment. And I'm going to give one more, and then I'm going to give the floor to you and ask you what you thought about it. One of the more, I think, again, this is why I respect the guy, because I truly believe he's saying what he feels. John Bolton, total wackadoo, crazy, doing that. And then he talks about it. He goes, but when I walk into a room with Iran or another adversary and they see Bolton next to me, they know it's not effing around time, basically. He says they know he's crazy and he will bomb them. And he goes, that's kind of an asset. And look, as a pragmatist, I don't like that, but I'm not stupid. And I hope he can make the balance where, again, the next guy behind him is not a wackadoo, but somebody, again, will press the buttons, will give the orders if necessary, if it's a real thing. So, again, I ranted a bit there. I know you watched the whole thing. What do you think?
So ultimately, during that portion of the conversation where he was talking about the experience of how John Bolton came to be with him in the White House, I mean, he did admit that when he came to Washington, D.C., he didn't know what he was doing because he had never been a politician. He'd never been president. There's no manual describing how you're supposed to do it. And he was surrounded by special interests and lobbyists and vipers, as you so succinctly put it. And so President Trump admitted that, people handed him lists and they said, these are the people that you should put into these positions because they're the experts. This is something that I've actually said for a really long time. People would, in the chat, they'd say, why is Trump hiring this guy? Why is Trump doing this way? Why is he even having these people around him? And I've always thought that this was it. You're a businessman. You're a CEO. You delegate responsibility to people who can do that job and whom you have been told you can trust. As a CEO, you don't go around doing interviews with every single person who's going to be running each individual department. But now, after 4 years in Washington, D.C., 4 years outside of the White House, President Trump has had enough time to learn who these people are, and more importantly, to learn who his true allies are and the people who are going to support making America great again. And that includes at every single level. Now, Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard had an event over the weekend, and they kind of piggybacked on this point that President Trump was making in that interview with Joe Rogan. And that is that President Trump put the money together ahead of time, 3 months early, to create a transition team, which includes both of them, total 20 different people from across the political and ideological spectrum, real experts that are not lobbyists, that are not special interests, that are not coming from that sort of public-private sector revolving door, the types of people that we always see in Washington, D.C., and the exact people who populate the deep state and the resistance that we saw in those first 4 years. So I think that Trump's interview, at the end of the day, was exactly what he wanted to present. He had things that he wanted to say. He has things that he wants to say in certain ways. And even if he is doing that weave, he does eventually come back to the point that Joe was hoping he was going to make, but it just took a baby about an hour longer than he hoped.
Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes. Again, as somebody who watches this stuff all the time, for instance, I'm glad he talked about JFK, but he talked about Pompeo in a positive light. No bueno. 9/11 was not brought up. I wish it was. I hope that, again, my Giuliani interview, at least the portions on 9/11, get some play, because I think it's really important that that is also something that gets declassified. But then with the UAP thing, it's the same thing I've heard them say again and again. I've talked to these pilots and they've seen things. Really, Don? I know they've seen things. I've seen these same people on television shows. I want to know if you've actually looked at any of this stuff. And Rogan did put him on the spot and talk about military projects, et cetera, et cetera. You know how I feel about all this. I think that there's a large smokescreen and an agenda to get you to believe in some kind of alien life. I'm not convinced, everybody. I mean, again, if you just look at the kind of religious angle of all of it, and even panspermia being something someone like a Richard Dawkins will actually say, well, that is a possibility. Easy, cowboy. Hold up. There's a lot there. That's for another time. We're going to take a break. We got a bunch of other news. By the way, news a lot of other people aren't hitting on. Did you know that Epstein's cellmate just got life in prison? We're going to talk about that and much more with Zach Payne. RedPill78news.com is where you find him. And we'll be back with more Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Hey folks, it's your buddy John Rich here and co-founder of Old Glory Bank. Let me ask you a question. Why would you trust your banking with people that hate you? Well, you shouldn't. We're building a freedom economy, and now we have a pro-America bank. It's called Old Glory Bank. Check it out at oldglorybank.com and open yourself an account today.
Old Glory Bank is a full-service, FDIC-insured online bank with business and consumer banking and customers in all 50 states. It takes just 8 minutes to open an account at oldglorybank.com.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's feeling with more energy, more get up and go. And it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we are back. And over the weekend, actually a little bit before the weekend, I spent some time with a buddy of mine in Oneonta, New York, which has gone to hell. That's a whole nother conversation. But he's former NYPD, and he moved upstate because it's not easy being NYPD, everybody. And he's in the sheriff's department. Now, he brought up another guy from the NYPD. And we were talking Epstein. A lot of people love talking Epstein with me. And I brought up his cellmate during the first suicide attempt. And it was a gentleman by the name of Nicholas Tartiglione. Now, not surprisingly, the guy who was still in the NYPD absolutely knew who Tartiglione was and knew about his family that, let's just say, there's a lot of questions out there. And there's a lot of questions as to whether or not this is the only crime that Tartiglione was committing or just the first one he was caught up in. And that would be the execution of 4 men upstate New York in a drug deal as he was an NYPD officer. Tartiglione has now been sentenced to life for these executions. But a lot of people don't talk about the fact that Epstein told his lawyer, and his lawyer went public, that Tartiglione tried to strangle him. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what happened in that first suicide attempt. It's been tossed to the wayside. This guy is obviously a very corrupt... I mean, to put bullets in the back of 4 people's head and bury them on a farm as a police officer. Can you imagine what this guy actually did before he got caught? I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, so Tartiglione was kind of a special case when it comes to corruption within police departments. I mean, the guy was huge. I don't know that he still has the opportunity to be doing roids and trenbolone like he was obviously before, but I mean, this guy was a scary and imposing figure. And I'm actually surprised that it took this long for him to be convicted of those murders. I thought it would have happened a long time ago. And I always assumed that Tartiglione likely was the one who actually killed Jeffrey Epstein, considering the first, quote, attempted suicide and his comments to his lawyer. But if he got popped for killing 4 drug dealers and burying them in upstate New York, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that was simply the first and only thing that he got caught for. And it just happened to be one of the worst things. I mean, I don't know how long this guy was a cop for. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it was like between 8 and 12 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. And undoubtedly during that time, he probably was engaged in every single manner of grift and illegal activity, because people who get a badge and then start committing crimes, oftentimes they get the badge with the intention of committing crimes. I mean, they're already criminals when they come in and go to the police academy. It kind of reminds me of The Departed, right? I mean, like you've got like this this mob organization. They send this kid through the police academy with the express intention of creating an inside man. And then once that inside man is there, they basically have full access to everything that they could possibly want to do. People are naive if they think that this stuff isn't happening right now and that it hasn't been happening for as long as there has been police in the United States. I mean, I respect police that do the right thing, that are law-abiding citizens and take the job so that they can protect and serve. And it's really unfortunate, but people who are psychopaths and have a criminal mentality, they will often seek out positions of authority so that they can abuse that authority. It's the same with politics. It's the same with, pedophilia, people getting jobs as teachers so they get access to kids. I mean, it knows no boundaries, and it goes across all lines. I think ultimately at the end of the day, we have a problem with morals and ethics and ethical boundaries here in the United States. And there isn't enough attention placed upon making sure that people who get involved in positions such as this, that give them authority and power over other people, that they are not this type of person. There has to be a way to sort that out. And I know that, you join like the Central Intelligence Agency and they're going to give you a pretty detailed psychological profile. But they're looking for people like this. This is exactly the type of person they want working there, because they want to make sure that if they need someone to get killed or if they need you to do something a little unsavory, you're not going to have a problem doing it. But it's bad.
And maybe they use somebody like this as an asset later on. He doesn't necessarily even have to be there. I'm just throwing it out there, guys. Let's shift gears a little bit. Boeing. A lot of people don't even realize this. They don't realize how much of a military-industrial complex contractor Boeing is, but they also have a space unit, and the CEO says he might clean some house. And to me, along with this story right here, where we now have an individual saying, hey, it's time to just leave the ISS. There's some other kind of a hole there. And I just want to show people even this crack in one of the glass things from space debris that's there. Here's the thing. I think we're rebranding whatever it is going to be in space. Unfortunately, I think a lot of that's weaponry. And some of that weaponry is going to be produced via CGI in the post-truth world. I think a lot of it already kind of has been, but I do believe, obviously, we're in space. That in low Earth orbit is real. But I think that this also new rebranding of, self-landing rockets. I mean, hey, assholes. I'm sorry so excuse my French. Did you see that rocket that supposedly went up and then came back into the cone? Attach people to that thing. It's another ball game at the capsule, all right? And that rocket going off. All I'm saying is people have this grandiose idea that the stuff we see in movies is going to be a reality with these rockets, right? And Musk, to a certain extent, to a large part of the populace, has become the hero and not the villain. And even with the villain, with some people, rocket villains have been around for a while. You kind of are going to acquiesce to that a little bit. Nobody seems to have a problem with Bezos and his Blue Origin project. And, he's another military industrial complex. They've always got people on the back burner. But to me, again, Boeing is already kind of being worked out of the situation. NASA, more and more, has been worked out of the situation. But it's this rebranding with SpaceX taking over and this new sleek look and feel. But the bottom line is, I think this assessment of leaving the ISS is probably smart. I think it's not just NASA. I think you look at, it's supposedly one of the places that has a leak is the Russian section. I don't know if that's just convenient in the current narrative or not, folks, but that's what they're saying. So what are your thoughts on this from that 40,000 foot view? Because you have the people who think everything NASA is fake. I'm not one of them. I think obviously they're serving a lot of different purposes. I think most of the significant work that they're putting out there in the public arena has already been worked on in other places like DARPA, these projects on the ISS, beyond. And, they're trying to make it so it can go into a commercial level.
I think that's exactly what it is. NASA is kind of a front organization to bring some things that have already been produced in the background to the people, but it's also a giant clearinghouse to suck money out of the American people and their pockets. I actually know a person who works at NASA. I know a whistleblower actually at NASA, and they took me around their 5-story building one day. This was just a couple of months ago. The entire place is empty, Jason, and every single cubicle has a person who is collecting a nice federal salary with full benefits. And of course, there's a pension at the end of that career, and none of them are working in the building. Just about all of them are at home, or they're at their other full-time job where they're also getting salary and benefits and a pension. There is so much money that is being spent at NASA that is going absolutely nowhere. And oftentimes it makes it very easy for that money to be sucked out and then pushed into black budget programs because they don't seem to make any progress on anything at all. I think that NASA has had some incredible things that they've done, but I also think a lot of that stuff has been totally fake. I have seen my share of presentations from NASA that were supposed to be people up in space or people doing spacewalks. And you can see bubbles. You can also see lines that are on people. It's just like, come on, right? I've heard so many different things. At this point, I don't know what to believe is real coming out of NASA. But if I'm on the International Space Station and I take a look at one of those windows and I see a crack like that, or I can feel air sucking out through any portion of that freaking thing, I'd be like, get me the heck out of here. I'm going back home. But it's kind of shocking that Boeing has fallen out of favor to the degree that they have. Boeing was the name in aviation and space flight. They have really hit the bottom. This is just about as close as you can get to scraping the bottom of the ocean as a military contractor. I truthfully hope that with returning Donald Trump to the White House, with Elon Musk heading up the Department of Governmental Accountability or Efficiency, rather. I'm just saying, Jason, I'm hoping that we can clear out a large portion of the federal government, stop spending so much money. And at the end of the day, we won't have a need to put so much emphasis on weaponry and defense. And we can just bring peace to the world, because I think that truthfully, humanity wins if we stop killing each other. And that's really the only thing that I care about.
Well, that's a heartfelt Hallmark card at the end there, my friend. And I'm with you there. I just don't see it happening, Captain. I wish it was. You know how I don't trust the Musker do. But at the same time, you kind of we're getting into my next part of the story. And you talk about the funding for the war machine. Trumsky and Hutch floating out the idea of no income tax. I love the term flirting with the ultimate tax cut. Well, let me tell you something. If he's flirting with it, he needs to marry that sucker day one in office, and Ron Paul needs to officiate the wedding, okay? That's what needs to happen. It's the only solution. He actually talked about this a little on the Rogan podcast. I don't think it's reality. I wish it were. But I think, again, since all these corporations aren't paying taxes anyway, slash the government right in half day one, like Ramaswamy said. Literally make it hey, this is what we're doing. By the end of the week, half of you won't have your jobs. You talked about that NASA deal. well, that's going to make a lot of people that, actually do work there have to get paid. So maybe we get rid of some of those people and the money laundering, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a firm believer in this. We didn't always have a federal income tax, and it's the federales more than likely that are coming after you. Listen, I get it. State taxes, everybody talks about roads. We're at a point, my friend, again, that the policies have destroyed my upstate New York town in the 4 years that I've left there. The homelessness is out of control. People are ODing on the streets. I witnessed one and being put on a stretcher. And my friend works at the hospital, so he's like, well, if we don't see it every day, it's every other day, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day. The Narcan is now not only being taught to be administered by high school and middle school teachers, but the students themselves. Okay? And again, he works at the hospital. He started as the COVID slave wrangler that would take your temperature. And don't think I didn't give him a lot of hoo-ha about that, folks. But the transgender surgeries, that's what's going on there. And yes, they're doing them to kids. And yes, it's their bread and butter now. I don't want to pay for that. And so much of that, the catch and release, the Section 8 housing they built that said it was going to be for artisans and grants. No artists there, just fentanyl and heroin addicts, everybody. I don't want to pay for that. I also don't want to pay for the bombs that Lockheed Martin and others produce. So let's scale it back, because we all know we're going to have a military. That's going nowhere, Sauce, under the Trump administration. So what do you think about this idea of no income tax, no más?
I absolutely love it. I think that income taxes are illegal at the end of the day. I'm from Michigan, and when I lived in Michigan, I paid a pretty hefty state income tax. Now I'm a resident of Florida, where I don't pay any state income tax. I also don't pay any corporate income tax for the state of Florida. And let me tell you something, our roads are beautiful. We have incredible infrastructure down here. So there is a way to take care of your state and to take care of your community without stealing that money from the people. Right now, the federal government is like the largest employer in the United States. That's a major problem because it feeds into the idea that the federal government must continue to hire people so that we can even stay afloat as a country. Who is going to vote against themselves keeping their jobs? Most of those people are probably voting Democrat for a reason. The only way we can fix this system is if we break it and come up with something else. So yes, we are going to have massive unemployment. But you know what the difference here is going to be is that now the people who have been voting for the rest of the country to remain in poverty will finally feel what it's like to also live in poverty and to know what's happening when the federal government is not taking care of them. We shouldn't be taking care of people in that way. We should be taking care of the most vulnerable elements of society. These people went to college, they got gender studies degrees, or they wanted to go into social work, whatever it might be. They can learn how to do something else. What was it they used to say a couple of years ago, Jason? Learn to code. Okay, learn to code. There are opportunities out there. And if Donald Trump ends the IRS, slashes half the federal government, reduces our need to spend money, and takes away our number one export, which right now is weaponry, bombs, and war. If we end war, then we can start focusing on building up industries of other types here in the United States. And it's going to force, his plans economically are going to force companies to come back to the United States. They're not going to have the tremendous tax burden. He was saying also that Apple has like $10 billion that they're keeping over in Europe because they can't bring it back because they'd have to pay 40% tax on it. That's ludicrous. Let them come back. Let them build factories here. Let them make American jobs. Let us produce things in the United States like we used to after World War II. Give these companies a reason to stay here and give the American people a way in which they can thrive.
Love it. We're going to take another break. We're going to come back. We got Zach Payne with us. More Making Sense of the Madness after this.
My name is General Mike Flynn, and I want everyone to know that I stand fully behind Beverly Hills Precious Metals and its owner, Andrew Sorcini. We are facing one of the greatest periods of financial uncertainty in both American and world history, and so now is the time to organize your finances. With the advent of the BRICS pay system, we need to now seriously consider how we can take better care of ourselves and our families and start some serious decision making when it comes to our wealth. You can also ask about their newest 2-ounce coin of yours truly. It's an absolutely great gift, and I am deeply honored to be part of history, as well as helping people protect their finances, their wealth, and their investments. So visit gold.generalflynn.com. Tell them the General sent you. Thank you so very much. God bless you, and God bless America.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to thepatriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to thepatriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now.
And we are back with Zach Payne. And, I personally, when someone dies, no matter how terrible they are, I don't like to piss on their grave. But he's not dead yet. Harvey Weinstein, diagnosed with cancer in the latest health concern for disgraced Hollywood producer. Now, this one came out last week, and I thought to myself, well, look at that. He might actually die in prison after all, because some of these appeals are actually going through, and some of these convictions are being overturned. So there is the possibility within the next several years, just like Cosby, you may just wake up one morning and Harvey Weinstein may be a free man. Now, on the other end, you may wake up one morning in the next several years and he'll be dead from cancer. So, que sera, sera. Again, I don't revel in death. I'm just saying that if this monster sauce, even though he spent some time in prison, was able to buck the system, this would be another crap in my oatmeal. I specifically remember, Zach, I was on my way. This is pre-COVID 1984, just on the brink, okay? February of 2020. And I am driving into D.C., literally getting into the belly of the beast at the moment for an Action for Assange event. And I hear on the radio that they've convicted Harvey Weinstein and he's going to prison. And I didn't think that was a possibility. I was alone in my car. I shouted in joy several times. I won't say what I said because this is a family show. But let's just say it was a big F yeah. That's how, all right, over and over again. It was a big win. Again, for that to get overturned, it really shows you how the system works. But again, I think there's a thing called karma. Some people embrace that evil and they become ever more powerful. But I got news for everybody. It's one run at the title. Time runs out for everyone. And time may run out in prison for Harvey Weinstein.
So, if I'm not mistaken, Harvey Weinstein, he's in prison in California, correct?
Actually, he's in Rikers right now. He's in New York.
Right. He's in New York. Okay. So, but it was the New York case that was overturned, his New York conviction. I actually was a little bit upset about that myself. But I think that at the end of the day, the blame has to be put on the prosecutors and the way that they prosecuted that case. Because there were some definite rules that they broke. And I truly do believe if we're going to dole out justice in the United States of America, it's got to be done fairly. It's got to be done equally. And I'm not a big fan of prosecutorial misconduct, even if it's putting people away that I loathe. I was actually, not too surprised when Harvey Weinstein was convicted. I mean, it seemed pretty obvious that the Me Too movement needed to have a sacrificial lamb of sorts. And Harvey Weinstein appeared to be one of the most loathed men in Hollywood. Even though he was very powerful, he was powerful at the expense of many other people. So that was an opportunity for somebody else to grab that brass ring. And since then, Hollywood has taken a straight nosedive into the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So they all get what they deserve, as far as I'm concerned. I also think that it's interesting he's got cancer because he probably was jabbed being in prison, right? I mean, don't you think that they would have forced all those guys to get the jab? I mean, I wonder if that has anything to do with it. He seems to be generally in bad health. I mean, you look at the guy, he doesn't exude Mr. Olympia. So I'm also not too surprised that he's got cancer. But, I mean, that's what happens. I mean, you live a life full of greed, avarice, excess, and envy, and you're going to get back what you put into it.
Zach, we got this story right here. The Menendez brothers. Now, apparently, they're now up for parole. That's kind of been the decision from Gascon, so it's not time served. They're now essentially asking for their sentences to be commuted via Newsom. The documentary after the series, I think, obviously helped this come along when people realized, hey, these were probably sexually abused kids. But it still strikes me as very odd that the Netflix series really didn't go into that and portrayed them much more like villains instead of that even-ended story. What do you think of that dynamic? I've got to admit, I don't have a Netflix account. I haven't watched either. I've only seen the accounts from everybody out there. And I was disturbed by, again, the fictional, if you will, dramatization of what happened. But then, in, quick order, we got this documentary that did go into a lot of it and what actually happened in the trial. And now, look, I think we're in a situation where I don't know that they should have served a day in jail, to be honest with you. I can't imagine that kind of abuse now that I'm an adult. Now, I remember when it was happening and I was a kid, and I kind of put it by the wayside, like, well, even if it happened, they were this old and blah, blah, blah. You don't come back from things like that, especially from your parents. And at this point, I think it's time served. I don't think that they pose a threat to anybody else. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you 100%. Now, when it comes to the fictionalized account that was produced on that miniseries on Netflix, from what I understand, it was by Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy is the guy behind such American classics as American Horror Story and the many, many years of sequels and repeats of that came out. And that show's pretty disgusting, if you ask me. I'm not a fan of it. And I think that Ryan Murphy, as an individual, is pretty disgusting and reprehensible. And the way that he portrayed the Menendez brothers was sort of like a twisted gay fantasy of what he had hoped their lives were like. And from what I understand, they were pretty offended by it because that's not who they were. This is something that Ryan Murphy was hoping to portray for maximum impact. He wanted it to be shocking and he wanted it to be something that people were going to be talking about. And, obviously you've got two brothers who are supposedly sleeping together, also molested by their parents, killing their parents, and then acting like total jerk-offs. I mean, yeah, people were definitely paying attention. But I'm glad that the documentary came out and actually gave them an opportunity in a fairer sense to tell their story, because what happened to those guys as children, as you said, is not the kind of thing you recover from. But they have had 30 plus years to basically rot in prison and to think about their lives and what's happened to them and what they had to endure as children. I got to be honest. I mean, I know a lot of people who wouldn't have a problem with just lining up pedophiles across the country. I mean, if that's what it takes to save children from being molested, if that's what it takes to stop lives from being ruined, and by the time these people are adults, I don't have a problem with it. I think they should get out.
I've heard some people speak on, obviously this issue, which is a serious one. And I think it was Flynn. Actually, I should put that whole press conference together. And he said, there are two kinds of problems. There are problems that you can solve, and there are problems, unfortunately, you can only manage. And he basically talks about this being a problem that can only be managed because of essentially the darkness in the world and human nature, and not only where we are as an American society and culture, but globally, the practices, unfortunately, that have been out there. Last story to talk about, my friend. Trump aide Margot Martin reveals horror of assassination attempt as new footage shows her fleeing the carnage. And let's just show you a little bit of that. That's a screenshot from the video. The reason I'm picking up on this story, Zach, is the fact that there's got to be tons of video out there. We have seen barely any of the video that was clearly shot on that day. I mean, this isn't, 2000. This isn't 2010. This happened in 2024. You know as well as I just went to my first Trump rally. Phones aplenty, including mine taping some of this stuff. You know what I mean? So the idea that we've seen less than, I want to say less than 5 videos of the actual event in any regard, and probably less than a dozen videos altogether surrounding the event, is absolutely ludicrous. So where are the videos?
They're in the possession of the FBI. They went around confiscating videos. I mean, they specifically did not want any video getting out that would threaten the official narrative of what happened on that day. And even news stations that reported on it very quickly in the aftermath. I mean, talking about injuries of other people in the audience. Those injuries completely distract from the lone gunman narrative that Thomas Crooks is alleged to be. They cannot allow that stuff to get out there, because then you have to start asking the question of, okay, well, if there was more than one shooter, where were they? And you can triangulate that when you have video of other people in the audience getting shot or bullets coming and hitting different parts of those bleachers. They don't want that stuff out there. I mean, they have to manage this story, because at the end of the day, if you have a lone gunman and he's already dead, then there's nothing else to learn. And, this also ties into the idea that the FBI or some other intelligence unit can't get into Thomas Crooks's phones. This guy was a Reddit-loving neckbeard, okay? I mean, like, he's not some super spy. I don't believe that they can't get into his devices. I mean, the FBI or the CIA or the NSA, whoever it might be, they're listening to everything we're doing all the time, no matter where we are, because everything's got cameras, everything's got microphones, everything is being recorded. I mean, you go back to the foundation of the Patriot Act. I mean, they siphoned up all data all the time. And from what Edward Snowden told us, I mean, they've got a searchable database. I know these things exist. So all you'd have to do is just figure out any communications coming and going from anything owned by Thomas Crooks, and boom, you can go out there and siphon it up. And the same with anybody who's in the audience.
Zach, let everybody know where they can check you out and support all your work, brother.
That is at redpill78news.com, and I am redpill78 on just about all social media, not Facebook, not YouTube. Hope to see you there.
All right, my friend, we're going to take one final break, and we'll be at the final segment of Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Hi, fellow patriots. How are you today? No, really, how are you? If you're looking for a way to energize, depuff, revitalize your skin, and maybe soothe some sore muscles, look no further than the Patriot TV store and the Nu Skin Renew Spa IO system. This is not your basic body massaging system. Nuh-uh. This has adaptive microcurrent technology that goes through these wonderful nodes on the bottom to really get in there. When you use it, you feel it just gently tickling in there and massaging everything. It's marvelous. And not only do you get the device, you also get a free tube of the special conductive gel to go with it. So there you are. You can depuff, you can revitalize, energize, and not only that, contour, firm, and tone. And we all want that. So go to the Patriot TV store now and get yours today from Nu Skin, the Renew Spa IO system. Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here is your golden chance to advertise with Jason Bermas and connect with his massive audience on Patriot TV and his incredibly loyal social media followers. As an advertiser on Making Sense of the Madness, you also reach his followers on the top social media sites. As Jason dives into complex current events and conspiracies, offering investigative analysis and thought-provoking discussions to uncover the deeper truths behind the headlines. When you advertise with Jason on Making Sense of the Madness, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Jason's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Jason's followers will buy your products or services over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
And we are back. We are now joined by the man, the myth, the legend behind Rosenberg Wealth Management. You can find him at rosenbergwealthmanagement.com. You've got decades of fiduciary experience, and you've been pretty hot on Roth IRAs. And let's be honest, it's not something that gets discussed in general. There's a lot of buzz around crypto. I would say when we're talking about the markets, the stock market's at an all-time high, but a lot of that really does have to do with inflation, et cetera. And the certain stocks that have moved are really tech-based in nature or within the military-industrial complex. You offer a little bit different of an approach. Can you tell us about it?
Sure, Jason, thanks for having me today. Well, we've been in the industry for almost 70 years now, family business. I've been helping folks for almost 40 years now. We take a holistic approach to really helping folks. We look at really making sure they have a sound and fundamental financial plan. They have a good team to help them accomplish those goals. And then we go out and we build that plan and help them implement it. Or we introduce them to somebody who can. On the institutional side, we work directly with money managers, because we've actually helped build product over the past couple decades for the money managers, built those products, branded those products, and taken them through the due diligence process at the broker dealers like the Merrill Lynch's and UBS and Wells Fargo and the big banks and the TAMPs. So our goal is really to make sure our clients can withstand any type of craziness that goes on the news, the elections, or anything out there in the financial environment. We want to protect them.
So let's talk about those elections. We're on the heels of what some are calling the most important election in history. And one of the base issues that, neither side can avoid is obviously the economy. Trump has kind of embraced the rhetoric around the economy, essentially saying, hey, look at what I did before this terrible virus, China virus, came out. And Harris really hasn't offered any solutions other than the fact that they're saying there's going to be a tax cut for 100 million Americans. They're going to give first-time home buyers essentially $25,000 towards these homes. I'm highly skeptical of any of that because at the same time, she's saying that she would have changed none of the policies that have gone on in this past administration via Biden. Well, they haven't been great economic policies. So essentially what I'm saying is, to a certain extent, inflation seems to be here to stay, even with both, candidates in there. And you want to build a system, whether or not Trump gets in and his policies maybe do bring a little bit more economic prosperity to those, or we continue to go down this Harris road, you have options.
Well, the biggest challenge, Jason, is going to be taxes. There's $34 trillion in national debt. That's with a T, 34 trillion. $1 trillion accrues in interest every 100 days. Somebody's got to deal with that. The only way to deal with that is look at our qualified retirement plans, our pensions, our 401ks, our defined benefit plans, our profit sharing plans, and tax those. And tax rates have to go up. The Tax Cut and Job Act is going to sunset at the end of 2025, at the beginning of 2026. We're going to have new tax brackets, and they have to be higher. So you brought up Roth IRAs at the beginning, Jason. Let's talk about that for a second and why it's really relevant to the conversation. The first thing is, why would you do a Roth conversion in the first place? And that is essentially to make sure that you leave a tax-free legacy for your heir, for your spouses, or for your beneficiary. Second reason is to eliminate and reduce required minimum distributions, because that increases your taxable income. And when tax brackets go up, you're going to have more taxable income because you're forced to take income from your qualified retirement plans. Let's just talk about the first one. When you want to leave a legacy to your wife, spouse, or beneficiary, you want to make sure you can do it in a tax-free manner. If you transfer an IRA or a 401k plan to a spouse or a beneficiary, that becomes a tax bump. For a spouse, it's called the widow tax. And for kids, they have to take it lump sum or over 10 years. And all of it is going to be taxable income. It's going to put them in probably a higher tax bracket because they might be filing differently. And they really don't have control over how they take distribution. That's one of the huge advantages of doing a Roth conversion. We listen to our clients. They're looking for ways to save money on taxes, which I think you were really alluding to. And this Roth conversion is a great way. So not only is it provide a tax-free legacy, it gives you the ability to reduce your required minimum distributions or eliminate your required minimum distributions, which reduces your taxable income. And the third thing is it creates a tax-free pool of money out of a taxable pool of money. So this has been a very big topic with our clients the past year and a half, really. They're looking to deal with what's coming, and that's, tax bracket increases.
So I know you're the author of Honest Conversations. Let's have a quick honest conversation about the fact that Donnie T has floated out the idea of killing the income tax, the federal income tax altogether. Now, this isn't new in regards to, some politicians talking about it. I'd go back to Ron Paul. I'm a big fan of this plan. He also kind of flirted with it a little bit on Rogan. I don't expect it to come into fruition. What are your thoughts on like a no federal income tax? And in reality, let's say Trump gets in. How much reform can we really expect in regards to federal taxes and the IRS?
I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room. There's too much debt. And I think it's going to have to be paid by somebody, which is us. The average American is going to have to step up and pay more taxes. No federal tax. Listen, there's been tax proposals like this for decades and decades and decades. But what becomes reality versus what is proposed on the campaign trail, there's always a big difference. So let's go back to blocking and tackling, the basics, the fundamentals. Build a sound financial plan. Read my book. Listen, I built it for the average American so they can have more productive conversations with a financial advisor. It gives you real life questions to ask so you can have a more productive conversation and you can build a sound financial plan to protect your family. It's built for the average American.
Danny, what would you like to leave the audience with, and how can they get started with you today?
Peace and love. Enjoy the surfing photography at the back of my book. Take care of yourself during this crazy election period. We wish the best outcome for everybody, and safe journey to everyone.
All right, Danny, thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching this show right here on Patriot.tv, where the truth lives. You know the drill with me. It's not about left or right. It is always about right and wrong. I love you guys, and we'll see you on the flip side.